The Sunday ticket case. We've now had several days to digest it. And of course, the NFL is hoping it all dies down and we quit talking about it, at least until they get a chance to go back to court on July 31 and try to convince the presiding judge, Philip Gutierrez, to throw out a $14 billion outcome. It's amazing to me, too, how many media outlets don't realize the $4.7 billion verdict, technically 4.696, gets tripled. The coverage of this has been embarrassing to the profession. And maybe it's indicative of, number one, journalists aren't lawyers. And number two, I really do think there's a lot of kowtowing to the NFL that goes on. I haven't gotten in trouble yet for being as blunt and candid as I've been about the Sunday ticket case. Maybe this is the straw that'll break the camel's back. I don't know. But boy, I feel like a lot of people are running scared when it comes to calling this Sunday ticket verdict what it is. So one of the obvious failures is we're not multiplying 4.696 by 3, and the headline should be 14.088 billion that's on the line. The other issue here, the NFL really does have ace in the hole, or ace up the sleeve, or wherever the ace goes that is good for the NFL. You look at what the Supreme Court did yesterday in the presidential immunity case. The Supreme Court, and again, this is not a political opinion, it is a political fact. The Supreme Court is more political than ever. You can predict the outcomes of the rulings by just taking a head count of the justices appointed by Republican presidents and the justices appointed by Democratic presidents. 6-3. Get used to hearing that number, 6-3. It used to be, it was 4-4 with a swing. When Kennedy was on, he was the swing. He was a Republican that went a little rogue. They're always concerned, the presidents are, that the person they put on the bench might go rogue. There's been an effort, I think, in recent years on both sides to make sure that you're getting somebody that you can trust when the time comes to do what needs to be done, even if it means disregarding years of precedent, which we saw a couple summers ago. And I think what's happening now, and it's always been there, but I think it is more stark than ever before. The 6 that want to find a certain way out of that maze I was talking about earlier, they'll find a way to the other side of the maze, even if they have to ignore precedent. Precedent is supposed to be sacred. You're bound by the past rulings of the Supreme Court. They become law of the land, unchangeable under any set of circumstances. Well, you can always say this case is a little bit different, and here's why. So the outcome is going to be different. And that's a reality going forward. You know, there's so much hand-wringing on the Democratic side about what this means for the powers of a president, and basically we're electing a king. I guarantee you this. If and when there's a prosecution of a Democratic president that ends up at the Supreme Court under the current Constitution, they'll carve out some exceptions to yesterday's ruling. And then if there's a Republican president under the current Constitution that ends up being prosecuted, they'll push it back the other way. It's all driven by the desired result. So for as long as it's 6-3, and it may be decades until it's at least 5-4 the other way, if it's a Republican president, the powers are broad. If it's a Democratic president, they're going to find ways to reel it in. And that applies to everything. Abortion rulings, as long as it's under the current Constitution, it's going to be favorable to pro-life interests, and it's going to be adverse to pro-choice interests for the things that actually make it to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I say all that because, and I know this is a big financial risk the NFL is taking with $14 billion on the line, but what choice do they have? All they have left is the court system. So, Judge Gutierrez, please throw out the $14 billion verdict. It's going to be hard for him to do. Would have been easier for him to do before the $14 billion got attached to this, or 4.696 if you're only paying attention to what most of the media is saying. But I think there's reason for the NFL to be confident by the time they get to the U.S. Supreme Court, if the current configuration holds, and we're only talking about 3-4 years maximum, if and when that happens, the final ruling will be that 14.088 billion plus interest, which will become significant, attorney's fees, which will not be cheap for a 9-year litigation that continues forward. It could all go away like that. And if I were going to put a bet, if DraftKings or FanDuel's taking action on what ultimately happens here, I would bet on the NFL ultimately avoiding the $14.088 billion. The Supreme Court finding a way to say that the antitrust exemption under the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 applies to this, or finding that because the NFL wasn't the one directly selling Sunday Ticket to the end user, the antitrust laws don't apply. A lot of the arguments that have been made by the NFL and preserved by the NFL, they will find a sympathetic ear at the U.S. Supreme Court. And not just because Clarence Thomas got a Super Bowl ring from Jerry Jones 30 years ago, but that doesn't hurt. The Supreme Court has been and will be pro-business, and the pro-business ruling here is limiting antitrust liability, giving the NFL a $14 billion gratuity, and moving on. So get ready. Now, look, and this gets back to, this is the last point on, then I'm going to answer some questions. The biggest reason I've been disappointed by the way that my brethren in the media have been covering this case, even if the NFL ultimately doesn't have to pay a penny to the plaintiffs and can continue to do business the way it has, the mere fact that there was a trial in open court and documents came to light that reveal what the NFL has been doing to consumers, and this is the point where I may end up getting fired. The NFL's been screwing all of us for 30 years. That's the, I think, real headline of the Sunday Ticket trial. They decided 30 years ago, when they came up with the Sunday Ticket package, to make sure that they found a price that would be high enough to get a certain percentage of consumers to say, boy, you know what? I'd really like to be able to watch whatever game I'd like to watch instead of the games that are available to me on my local CBS or Fox affiliate. But boy, I just can't afford that. I just can't, I got to go get the Sunday Ticket. I got to get the DirecTV. I got to put the satellite dish in. I got to pay all that money. I just really am not in a position to do that. I'd love to do it, but I just can't. That's one set of victims that isn't even represented by this case. The people who never got Sunday Ticket because they weren't going to pay the exorbitant price are technically victims. They could have been enjoying Sunday Ticket for the last 30 years. The victims are, in that window from 2011 to early 2023, the people who paid the exorbitant price, who wanted it badly enough. And they market it. Saints fan in Pittsburgh, want to watch the Saints games. How do I do it? Get Sunday Ticket. Good, I'll get the Saints games. Oh shit, I got to get all of them. Oh well, I love the Saints enough that I'll pay for all of them, even though I don't care about the others. How much does it cost? Oh man, that's going to hurt, but I love the Saints. That's how they've always marketed the damn thing. So the PR fallout, if there really was any, and there really hasn't been, should be, hey fans, here's what they really think of you. They're manipulating you like pawns on a chessboard. They're doing what they have to do to maintain what they're getting from CBS and Fox by driving the price up so high that you really have to pay through the nose when you shouldn't have to get it, or you just watch whatever's on CBS and Fox. I'll tell you a story back from the early 90s, early to mid 90s, before I got Sunday Ticket. I remember where I was when I became aware of Sunday Ticket. My wife and I had just gotten married. Our 30th anniversary is coming up, August 26th. We were looking for furniture, as newly married couples tend to do. And as we were browsing, I saw one of those cardboard cutout displays with this thing called Sunday Ticket. And I started reading it, and I got very excited. Because here I am, 1994, 30 years ago, rabid NFL fan of the Vikings, which I stupidly picked as my team instead of the Steelers, even though I grew up in Steeler country in the early 70s, and even though it was the Immaculate Reception that drew me to football in the first place, for some reason, if you haven't noticed, I've got a little contrarian streak. I decided I wasn't going to be a fan of the Steelers. I like that purple helmet with the two things on the side that I really didn't know what they were at first. Didn't realize they were horns. I just thought it looked cool. The purple looked cool. Fran Tarkenton and Chuck Foreman. Anyway, fast forward 20 years, I can watch all their games. Wow. But you know what? We were renting a house at the time. The whole idea of getting the satellite dish, it was expensive. We were watching our money, saving for a house. I can't remember what it cost at the time, but it was enough to get me to say, that's for down the road a little bit. And it was ultimately 3 years down the road. So for 94, 95, and 96, I remember going to the store. And I love going to the grocery store. I've said that before, because you go and you have a list of things, you get them, you bring them home, you put them away, and you feel like you have completed something, unless you forgot to get something on your list, which I tend to do. But it's still, there's something finite and rewarding about you leave your house with nothing, you go, you push the cart around, you get all the stuff you want, you bring it home, you put it away, mission accomplished. Anyway, I remember standing in line, pulling off the TV guide. It was about yay big by yay big, and it was bound flat. It wasn't like a normal magazine that was stapled in the middle page and flopped open. It had a thick binding to it. And I'd go, and I probably should have bought the thing, but I was saving for a house. And I'd look to see on the local affiliates coming up on Sunday, is there a chance that the Vikings game is going to be on? And there were certain weeks where, maybe there's a chance. Steelers play at 4. They're on the West Coast, maybe the 1 o'clock game and I guess at the time it was NBC and Fox, 94, 95, 96. It was NBC and Fox. Maybe they'll have the Viking game. Maybe Fox will have the Viking game today because the Steeler game isn't on until 4 on NBC because they're playing as the road team at San Francisco, whatever the case may be. And I remember having that feeling, that little, and the little dopamine rush if I'd see Vikings at Giants, 1 o'clock Eastern on the local Fox affiliate. That's how it is. If you don't have DirecTV, you are stuck with whatever is on your local affiliate. It's not DirecTV, Sunday Ticket. Obviously, it's no longer on DirecTV. So my point is this. For 30 years, the NFL has priced that product so that even though you have the freedom of choice, it costs so much that most people will just choose to turn on their TV and watch whatever game is being provided in their local market. And that's one of the reasons the NFL is so adamant about, we have free over the air in every market. Every team's games are free over the air in their local market. Yeah, but you got people in that market that don't want to watch that game. And that's the problem here. Even if they pay $0, we're all aware of what the scam has been for 30 years. And here's the reality. What's anybody going to do about it? I mean, I've canceled Sunday Ticket. Number one, I don't really need it. And I haven't needed it since I've been going to NBC every weekend for the past 15 years. But, we'll see if they offer it to me cheaper now that I've decided not to pay $3.89 for Sunday Ticket in Red Zone. And I did like to have it here in the event my son is down there. Other family members come over to watch the games, kind of open the barn if I'm not here and let folks enjoy the games. Why deprive them of that? It's a fun place to hang out and watch games. And yeah, it'd be nice to be here, but it's also very nice to be at NBC because it doesn't pay to be here. It does pay to be at NBC, but we'll see how it goes and we'll see what they do. We'll see if they change their ways, not because of this verdict, but because the game has been exposed. But the problem is, who's really exposing the game? Who's really talking about it other than me right here? Are the other media outlets telling consumers what the practical impact of the last 30 years has been? No. So I wish they would, just because, number one, 2 reasons. 1, more consumers will be aware of what's gone on. And 2, I won't be the only one they can blame. I will have some company if the NFL decides to be upset about the fact that we dare to point out the truth of Sunday Ticket for the past 30 years. Okay. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.